One of the things that we're going to be covering and looking at today is the fact that a lot of what Reform claim are their successes in running these, councils actually are not their successes. Indeed, many of the successes they are currently claiming that are their responsibility, they weren't even in charge or even on the council at the time when these things were put in place, discussed, or even voted on. And I've always told you, I've always specifically told you, the big problem with Reform, all their promises were never local policies. It was all running on this national platform. The problem then becomes what happens when you run out of that stuff, when you run out of that policy, when that policy sort of comes to an end, then what do you actually do? This is why upcoming in the next couple of months from December onwards, you're going to be in budget season. And this is their first real big test. Because if they cannot produce balanced budgets, or they produce a budget which causes a council to go bankrupt, then that's not on the previous administration. It's not on the current government. It is all on them. And we are now going forward. The more they are in power, the less they can, once again, claim, oh, it was all the previous administration and claim their achievements. Because now they're starting to get to a point where they have to start putting forward policy. They have to start making decisions. They are the ones who are in charge. And when you can no longer copy your former administration's homework, what on earth are they going to do? So before we go on more into this, please, of course, do remember to click on the like, share, and of course, subscribe button down below as well. There is the like button, the share button as well. And of course, don't forget to ring the bell as well so you get notifications of when we go live and we drop a new video. And of course, thank you very much to all the subscribers who hit the subscribe button. And of course, down below as well, there is the Patreon page. There's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there's the YouTube membership down below as well. So let's get on into this because this is kind of really interesting on this front. So you have a Conservative from Lincolnshire who basically did a deep dive into what the Lincolnshire County Council had actually been up to and what they'd actually been doing in their first 100 days. And you won't be too surprised, as you can see here, it's 100 days of reform and 100 days of copying Conservative plans. Surprise, surprise. And of course, remember, many of these reform people are ex-Conservative candidates. So of course, they're going to be copying some of this stuff. But are they actually going to be capable of pulling some of that stuff off? Because there is a reason why a lot of these ex-Conservative people that switch to reform never were like high flyers. They would never got to a cabinet position or anything like that. And that was very, very much so for a reason, because they were bad. Anyway, let's get on into this. As Reform marks its 100 days in control of Lincolnshire County Council, one thing is very clear. Behind the headlines, the recycled announcements, lies now a legacy of Conservative delivery that they are now scrambling to claim as their own. In now a press release full of familiar headlines, Council leader, Councillor Sean Matthews, lists his 6 achievements, but every single one traces its roots back to policies, plans, or even successes that were already well in place before May's election. Let us take a closer look. So first of all, the nuclear waste withdrawal, already agreed. Councillor Matthews claimed that day one action on the proposed nuclear waste site at Tiddlethorpe would, Tiddlethorpe, that's how you say it, not Tiddlethorpe, Tiddlethorpe, but it would take 2 weeks for Reform to actually then follow through, as was made very clear publicly back in March, on 18th of March in 2025 by the BBC. The Conservative administration had already committed to ending the partnership. Reform just merely executed the withdrawal that had already been triggered. Number two, property sales, part of our own long-term saving plan. Reform trumpeted a £15 million worth of potential savings by selling unused buildings. But as their report makes clear, this is simply the final stage now of a decade-long Conservative plan that has already saved hundreds of millions of pounds for Lincolnshire taxpayers. Nothing new, nothing bold, just carry on with our work. Number three, the IT contract delivered despite reform infighting. The new IT contract with Verizon One is a direct continuation of the procurement processes that we initiated. In fact, behind the scenes, reform figures, both locally and nationally, actually tried to derail the deal without offering any alternatives. Now they are taking credit for something that they tried to block. Number four, Send Hubs, a Conservative policy from day one. The new Send Hub program began its public consultation phase back in January, months before reform actually even took office. It was a Conservative initiative driven by our belief that children needed additional resources and that deserved better support in mainstream settings. Reform's only action was actually signing off on all our hard work. Yeah, so far for these 6 pledges, he's not done a lot, really, has he? Number 5, the Pothole Pro, a return now of a trial that we already rejected. Lincolnshire's engineers already trialed the JBC Pothole Pro years ago and found a lot better tools. Much like the multi-hog our country now needs, councillors already own the kit, so why push it again? Residents will, of course, rightly ask why equipment linked now to a major reform donor is now suddenly back in the spotlight. And that, bear in mind, is something new. This is actually something worth picking up, actually, because this is what a lot of people said that would happen, and surprisingly, it is happening. You are seeing a lot of these reform councils push things and equipment like this for filling all those potholes. Well, the guy and the equipment there just happen to be pushing to be purchased or trialed on, which would, get them a lot of money. Oh, look, it's a reform donor. Surprise, surprise, as they say. Anyway, and the final one that he was crowing about was now support for care leavers. It was a long-standing strength. Children's services in Lincolnshire were rated outstanding long before reform took over. Ofsted recent praise reflects years now of strong Conservative leadership, not 100 days of rebranding. So, what has reform actually done in its first 100 days? Well, first of all, they scrapped the Flood and Water Management Committee. It was now axed for vague efficiency reasons, despite warnings from experts, even cross-party politicians, at the same time of climate uncertainty, that Lincolnshire needs more flood oversight, not less. We've seen this everywhere. Everywhere that had a flood committee, they've scrapped it. Number 2, U-turn on their rhetoric. Having now, of course, spent months attacking Conservative performance, Reform councillors are now regularly admit that services are now well run and excellent. They've discovered what residents, of course, already knew, that Lincolnshire County Council is a high-performing council and has always been. Not surprising on that one. Or when they are coming into these problem areas where there is something wrong, they're like, oh, actually, this problem's really difficult to solve, and you're like, yeah, who knew that these problems would be difficult to solve and you need, policy to actually be able to do it? Have they got any of that? No. Number 3, they're committed now to borrowing, despite, of course, promising not to. Before the election, Reform slammed capital borrowing. Now they are borrowing even more and exposing yet, of course, another broken promise. Again, surprise, surprise. And oh, look, number 4, a chaotic administration. A chaotic administration for a Reform council. Say it in. So, anyway, behind closed doors, Reform's leadership has now been marked by infighting, committee check, sackings, absenteeism, and U-turns. Residents, of course, deserve to know who is actually running Lincolnshire. Is it Richard Tice, Nigel Farage, Zia Youssef? But one thing's for sure, it is not Councillor Sean Matthews. Once again, pointing to the fact that there is this central hold from that office down in London that is really running these councils. So the conclusion, 100 days now, and Lincolnshire residents are now actually seeing what happens when rhetoric replaces reality. The new leadership is now simply reheating old plans while actually struggling to maintain any unity and purpose. Reform promised transformation, but so far they've delivered little, nothing more than a photocopy of the Conservative record. What a surprise. I've been telling you this for the past couple of weeks now, since they've really come back in, and it is worth emphasizing this, that almost all their achievements they are crowing about that they have done, that was part of the last administration. And the thing is, all those policies, all those ideas and stuff, well, that has an end date. And they are rapidly approaching that end date, because their first big challenge is going to be the budget. And already there's stuff going on at some of these councils where they are going to be arguing about this. How are they going to increase council tax? Most likely, if they are smart, they will. Because if they freeze it or they try to lower it, well, then they're going to have to come up with savings elsewhere. Where are those savings going to come from? They don't know. They're going to have to, in some way, take money from services that are already, as we've seen in some councils, understaffed. So they have to bring in agency workers to help cover that staffing shortfall. But now they want to get rid of all those agency workers. How are you going to make sure that apartment even functions? Someone once told me recently in another comment that they haven't had any recycling collection for the past 3 weeks, which previously they used to have. You know, there is a lot of bad stuff going to happen to these reform councils. A lot of bad stuff. And they are going to find out themselves how bad and incompetent they are, because they're the ones in charge now. They're the ones who have to make decisions. They're the ones who have to make sure all this stuff runs, and they are accountable for it when it doesn't start to run or when it starts to go wrong. This is why them winning control of these councils isn't as really good as reform wants them to do, because at the moment they're living, as you've seen there, on borrowed plans, on borrowed homework, and even then that runs out, and that runs out very quickly. So we'll see what happens, but oh boy, are we in for some interesting months ahead for some of these reform councils. So as always, let me know what you think about this. Are you from Lincolnshire? What do you think about your reform council copying the former Conservative administration's homework? And does it at least make you worry about what the future might bring? Because they can only copy that homework for so long. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Do remember to leave a comment down below. And of course, click the like button on your way out as well. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.